When it comes to inheritances and what happens to an inheritance when someone doesn't want it, there is one key understanding you need to keep in mind, and that is. Hi, Jeff Masachi, the Plain English Attorney, and welcome to the video. Today we're going to talk about I have an inheritance, but I don't want it. What do I do? Now, look, as strange as it seems, not every inheritance is welcome or wanted. There are tax issues, potential lawsuits looming, or even just a desire to see the inheritance go somewhere else. However, there are different ways that people believe they can waive off an inheritance, and not all of them are equal or effective. We'll review the top ways that people inherit assets, review what happens when they don't want that inheritance, and then finally, we're going to review specific steps from a federal standpoint on how to disclaim an inheritance. Now, one of the top ways that people believe they are passing along their homes in an efficient manner is putting their kids' names on the deed to their property as joint with the right of survivorship in order to avoid probate. Unfortunately, this comes with a host of tax, Medicaid, and lawsuit liability implications that people don't want for them and their kids, but unfortunately, these downsides are not widely known. About a year ago, I did a whole video on this topic called the Joint Property Tax Trap, and it's going to be linked below, and we'll try to put a card in there as well. Unfortunately, when someone is a joint owner on real estate or other asset for that matter, they're not able to refuse to inherit that additional portion when someone dies. Now, when we get to the requirements to disclaim an inheritance, you'll understand why.
If you think it's important for educational videos like this to get out there, then please help us out by subscribing to the channel.
Another way of inheriting assets is through beneficiary designations on retirement accounts, life insurance, and other investment accounts. Now, this is another way to avoid probate when someone passes on, since by contract, the account goes to the named beneficiaries without probate. An unfortunate side effect of this method of inheriting is that because it bypasses probate, it also bypasses any age and other restrictions in a last will and testament. For example, if you name your two children, ages 18 and 20, as beneficiaries on your life insurance, but you put an age restriction of 30 on inheritances in your last will and testament, well, that life insurance would go to those children immediately upon death. This is because a will only covers probate assets. And since the beneficiary designation avoided probate, it avoids those restrictions as well. But can an inheritance by beneficiary designation be refused? And the answer is a qualified yes. Again, you'll see later there are specific circumstances that need to be met in order to disclaim an inheritance, and it is certainly not something that you can just sit on and contemplate forever. Finally, there is inheritance through a last will and testament or revocable living trust, as well as other kinds of trusts. Whether inheritance is coming through a will or a trust, an inheritance can be refused with the correct process. Now, when we review that process, you'll see there are specific consequences and contingencies for that inheritance. But one thing that is different in a last will and testament or trust is you can specifically draft provisions regarding what would happen if an inheritance is disclaimed that could be different from what happens under the legal defaults if you passed on before them. So, what can you do or what can't you do when it comes to refusing an inheritance? Here is where we have a lot of widespread misconceptions and assumptions. When you disclaim an inheritance, you can't direct where the inheritance goes. A legal disclaimer simply treats you as if you died before the deceased person. So, in the case of a deceased person with three children who left their account to them equally per stirpes, this means that if a child disclaims their inheritance, then it would go to their children, meaning those grandchildren of the deceased person equally. They cannot disclaim the inheritance and then just say they want it to go to their cousin Tony. No. A will or trust can, but often doesn't, specifically address that if someone disclaims an inheritance, then it goes to certain beneficiaries. But if that person dies before them, then it would go to other beneficiaries. In other words, the will or trust could give that inheritance to cousin Tony if there's a disclaimer versus if it goes to the grandchildren if they die beforehand, if it's actually in the will or trust. Now, if you disclaim an inheritance by beneficiary designation and it would go to younger beneficiaries, you can't say it only goes to those younger beneficiaries at a certain age. It goes according to the terms of the account contract or the will or the trust. Now, you can always accept that inheritance, deal with whatever tax consequences there are, and then give the inheritance to whomever you want. Of course, if the amount gifted exceeds the annual exemption for gift taxes, currently 18,000 in 2024, then a gift tax form needs to be filed. When it comes to inheritances and what happens to an inheritance when someone doesn't want it, there is one key understanding you need to keep in mind, and that is that the inheritance is happening because of the planning or lack of planning from the person who passed on. It is their estate plan. Whatever contingencies they have within their plan becomes effective if you refuse to take the inheritance. You only get a say in what happens to that inheritance if you accept it as your own, and then you can do whatever you want with it. So, how do you disclaim an inheritance? There are different procedures under different state laws, but here is federally how an inheritance is disclaimed with the Department of the Treasury. One, make the disclaimer in writing. Two, your inheritance disclaimer specifically states that you refuse to accept the assets in question and that this refusal is irrevocable and cannot be changed. Three, you are disclaiming the assets within 9 months of the person dying that you are inheriting from. Now, minors have 8 months from the date they reach the age of majority, so that's a little bit different. Four, you receive no benefit from the assets you are inheriting. So, in other words, if you're like accepting dividends from stock, you've moved onto the property for a couple of weeks, you can't then say, oh, I don't want it or I didn't accept the stock or the property. And five, the assets disclaimed don't pass to you in any manner, including indirectly. So, when all of these factors come together, you can effectively disclaim and reject an inheritance. Again, be sure to check state law regarding anything that might be required in your jurisdiction. For example, state statutes may require that to disclaim an inheritance under a will, that the written statement that's signed also has to be notarized. It has to be filed with the probate court. Okay. There are many personal factors that lead someone to not want to take an inheritance. However, it has to be done the right way, and the named beneficiary doesn't usually get the option of choosing whoever they want to get the inheritance instead. So, what are some reasons that you can think of why someone wouldn't want an inheritance? Let us know by commenting below. And if you've made it this far, please make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share this information with someone who might need it. And as I always tell my clients, please stay safe, plan ahead, and enjoy life. And whatever you do, make it a great day.